Have you ever been thrown out of your own home like trash by the man you sacrificed everything for? My husband forgot one detail. The house he's promising his mistress it was paid off, in full, by my trust fund, years ago. He thought I was a lamb. He's about to face the wolf my family raised. My name is Maya. I'm 32 years old, and I just learned that my entire life was a lie. I'd come home early from the charity luncheon. The drive back to our Medina home had been quiet, the persistent Seattle drizzle making the evergreens look like dark, weeping giants. I was hoping for a quiet afternoon, maybe a bath before Marcus got home. I pushed open the front door, the expensive, silent hinges he'd insisted on swinging open without a sound. That's why I heard him. He was in his study, the door slightly ajar. It wasn't his work voice, the one he used with investors. It was a low, intimate purr, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. Then came a laugh, a rich, full-throated laugh that vibrated with an excitement that made my stomach clench. "Of course, Sienna," he said. My blood went cold. "The house will be ours. Her. She gets nothing. She'll sign the papers, or I'll make sure she loses the house." The keyring slipped from my numb fingers, a heavy brass fob hitting the marble entryway with a sharp, unforgiving clatter. The laughter stopped. The study door flew open. Marcus stood there, 35 years old and the picture of tech success. His face a mask of pure shock. He saw me, saw my face, and the shock vanished. It was replaced by something I had never seen, something cold and dead and utterly ruthless. "You heard." It wasn't a question. Before I could even form a word, a movement from the living room caught my eye. His mother, Brenda Thorne, 58 years of a professional victim, glided into the hallway. She was followed by his sister, Lacey, 24 and perpetually unimpressed with the world. They weren't surprised. They were watching me. Brenda had a small, satisfied smirk on her face. This wasn't an accident. This was an ambush. They had been here the whole time, waiting. "I told you, Marcus," Brenda said, her voice dripping with venom. "This useless bitch can't even give you a child." The words hit me harder than a physical blow. "Brenda, what are you talking about, Marcus?" I looked at my husband, the man I had given up my world for, and saw a stranger. "What's she talking about?" I pleaded. His answer was a sharp, open-handed slap that sent my head ringing, the sound of it echoing in the high-ceilinged foyer. My cheek exploded in pain. "Sign!" he spat. He jerked his head toward the console table. A thick sheaf of documents sat there. Divorce papers. "You sign. You walk away with nothing, or I'll burn you to the ground." "Marcus, no," I whispered, the tears finally coming, hot and stinging. "We can talk about this, please." I refused to look at the papers. I would not do this. That was the wrong answer. He lunged at me. He didn't just grab me. He fisted his hand in my hair, yanking my head back so hard my neck popped. I screamed, a thin, terrified sound. He dragged me, stumbling and crying, across the polished floor, away from the front door and toward the garage. He slammed his hand on the keypad by the door. "You don't get it, do you?" he growled, his face inches from mine, his breath hot with rage. "You are nothing." The garage door whirred open, a heavy, mechanical groan. The cold, damp air of the Seattle afternoon blasted me. The drizzle had turned into a full, driving rain. He dragged me to the threshold and then, with a final, brutal shove, he threw me out. I landed hard on the freezing concrete of the driveway, the impact jarring my bones, scraping my hands and knees. The thin silk blouse and leggings I was wearing were instantly soaked, clinging to my skin like a wet shroud. "This is my house," he screamed, his voice echoing in the quiet, wealthy cul-de-sac. "Get out!" The heavy door slammed down, the sound like a gunshot. I heard the definitive metallic click of the deadbolt engaging from the inside. I was outside, shoeless, without my phone, my purse, my keys. I was on my hands and knees on the driveway of my own home, shaking so hard I thought my teeth would shatter. The rain was relentless, plastering my hair to my face, washing the tears and the humiliation into a cold, gray blur. A light flicked on in my neighbor's house. I saw the blinds twitch, a shadow. Then, just as quickly, the light went off. No one was coming. No one was going to help me. I was alone. The rain was a physical weight, driving the cold deep into my muscles until they locked up. I tried to push myself up, but my scraped palms screamed in protest. Each breath was a ragged gasp, sucking in the damp air that smelled of wet asphalt and pine. I was freezing, the kind of cold that bypasses shivering and goes straight to a deep, agonizing numbness. I crawled, half falling, toward the side of the garage where the shadows were deepest. And then I saw it. My old Jeep. The dark green Wrangler I'd had since college. Marcus hated it. He called it a relic, an eyesore on his perfect modern driveway. He refused to touch it, refused to let me sell it. "It's tacky, Maya," he'd sneered. "Just leave it parked where no one can see it." He never drove it. He never looked in it. But I did. My spare key was in a magnetic box under the wheel well, a habit from a life he didn't understand. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the cold metal. It took 2 tries, but the lock clicked. I tumbled into the driver's seat, the familiar smell of old vinyl and a faint trace of motor oil enveloping me. It was the first safe-feeling place I'd been in a year. I sobbed, a dry, racking sound, and slammed my forehead against the steering wheel. I had nothing. Wait. I lunged for the glove compartment. It was jammed with old napkins, expired insurance cards, a dried-out pen. I ripped it all out, my desperation growing, and then my fingers brushed against it. A heavy, obsolete-looking brick of a phone with a thick rubber antenna. A satellite phone. A gift from my grandfather the Christmas before I met Marcus. "For when the world ends, little bird," he'd said, his eyes twinkling. I'd laughed and thrown it in the Jeep, forgetting about it. My world had just ended. I jammed the power button. The screen flickered, a sickly green monochrome. It took an agonizing minute to connect, to find its signal, and then a single entry appeared on the screen. The only number saved. I pressed send. It rang once, not even a full ring. Croft. The voice was deep, calm, and exquisitely polite. It was a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years, but it was a voice I had known my entire life. The sound of it broke me. The dam of shock and humiliation burst. "Julian," I wept, the name tearing out of my throat. "Julian, it's me. It's Maya. I'm in Seattle. He kicked me out. He threw me out of the house." There was no pause. No, "What?" or "Are you okay?" Just a change in a tone, a drop of 10 degrees. "Send me your location, Ms. Caldwell." Julian Croft, my family's head of security and assets, said. His voice was now as cold as the rain on my skin. "I am inbound." Inbound. The word didn't make sense. "Julian, where are you?" I stammered, shivering so hard the phone rattled against my ear. "Airborne," he replied, without emotion. "I took off 5 minutes ago. Your grandfather had a feeling." I clicked the function to send the GPS coordinates, my fingers barely obeying. The line went dead. I sat there, soaking wet in the driver's seat of my old Jeep, the satellite phone heavy in my lap. I didn't know how long I waited. 10 minutes 20. The world had warped. The rain hammered against the roof. I thought I was hallucinating when I heard the engines. It wasn't the sound of a car. It was the sound of a fleet. Headlights, bright as day, flooded the cul-de-sac, turning the rain into a million glittering needles. They swept past my Jeep, and I craned my neck to see. It wasn't a Rolls Royce. It was 3 massive, blacked-out Lincoln Navigators, the kind that look like they're carved from obsidian. They had no license plates. They pulled up in perfect, staggered formation, blocking my driveway, blocking the street. They were a statement. My neighbor's light flicked on again. The passenger door of the lead vehicle opened. A man stepped out. Julian Croft, 60 years old and in a suit so perfectly tailored it probably cost more than my Jeep. He didn't even look at the rain. He simply opened a large black umbrella, the size of a small tent, and held it. The other doors opened. 10 men, all in black, all moving with a quiet, efficient purpose. They fanned out, creating a perimeter. They didn't look at the houses. They didn't need to. My neighbor's light snapped off and stayed off. Julian walked through the rain, the umbrella held over him, and came to the driver's side of my Jeep. He didn't try to open the door. He just stood there, his face grim, waiting for me. The absolute, unquestionable power radiating from him and his team was a physical force, pushing back the rain, the cold, and the night. Julian opened the heavy door of the lead navigator and I scrambled in, my wet clothes pooling on the immaculate leather floor. The door closed with the heavy, satisfying thunk of a bank vault. The world outside vanished. The sound of the rain, the lights of the street, all of it was gone, insulated by layers of armored steel and ballistic glass. Another man in the front seat handed Julian a folded bundle. Julian, without a word, passed it to me. It was a cashmere coat, impossibly soft and warm. He then produced a silver thermos from a console and poured a steaming cup of tea. Ginger, strong, just how he used to have it made for me after my riding lessons. I drank, the heat scalding my throat, burning away the icy numbness. I did not speak. I just watched the city lights slide by, blurred by the tinted glass, feeling the deep, subsonic rumble of the engine. I was remembering why I had run away in the first place. I am Maya Caldwell, the only heir to Caldwell Industries, a titan of heavy industry and private defense contracting, born and bred in Boston. I had spent the first 27 years of my life as a prisoner of that name, a caged princess in a gilded fortress. My life was board meetings, security details, and a future I never asked for. I wanted normal. I craved it like a drug. I wanted to pay my own bills, to go to a grocery store without an escort, to fall in love with someone who did not see a stock ticker when he looked at me. And then I met Marcus Thorne, a self-made tech engineer at a conference. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to have built his life from scratch. He was everything my world was not. He was my escape, to prove I could make it on my own, to prove my grandfather wrong. I had cut the cord. For 5 years, I had barely spoken to Arthur Caldwell, my 75-year-old grandfather, the patriarch who had raised me. I had lived in Seattle as Maya Thorne, the supportive wife, the part-time consultant, the normal woman, and it had all been a devastating, humiliating failure. Mr. Arthur is waiting at the penthouse. Julian's voice cut through my thoughts, calm and measured, as if he were announcing the weather. He canceled his meeting with the governor. The weight of that sentence settled on me. The governor. My husband had a tantrum. My grandfather moved statesman. We did not go to SeaTac. We did not go to an airport at all. The navigator slipped into a private underground garage beneath a nameless glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of downtown. Julian escorted me to a private elevator. There was no button for the floor. He pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, and the elevator began its silent, rapid ascent. The doors opened directly into a space that was less an apartment and more a fortress in the sky. 3-story windows showcased a commanding, godlike view of Elliott Bay, the lights of the ferries moving like slow stars on the dark water. He was standing by the window. Arthur Caldwell. He was not a large man, but his presence filled the cavernous room. He was in a bespoke suit, as always, his silver hair immaculate. He did not turn when the elevator opened. I stood there, dripping on his priceless rug, a pathetic creature in a borrowed coat. He finally turned. His eyes, sharp as a razor, took in my disheveled state, my bruised face, my bare feet. He did not scold. He did not say, "I told you so." His face remained impassive, but his eyes held a flicker of something ancient and cold. "You're home," he said. That was all it took. The 5 years of defiant independence, the shame, the terror, the rage of the last hour, it all broke. I collapsed. I fell to my knees and I told him everything. I told him about Marcus, the lies, Sienna, Brenda, the slap, being thrown in the rain. Arthur listened. He stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. He listened to every sordid, humiliating detail without a single interruption. When I was finished, just a heaving, sobbing mess on his floor, he nodded once. He walked to his desk, picked up the receiver of a secure hardline phone, and pressed a single button. "Deploy the cleanup team," he ordered. His voice was quiet, but it held an absolute, terrifying authority. "I want everything on Marcus Thorne and his company, Apex Innovative Solutions. I want to know the serial numbers on the cash in his wallet. 24 hours. My grandfather had me moved to a different suite, one with a full medical kit, a private doctor. A woman I'd never seen before, checked my bruised face and scraped hands with quiet efficiency, pronounced me free of any serious injury, and left. I slept for 6 hours, a deep, dreamless, and exhausted sleep, aided by the tea she had given me. When I woke, the sun was high over the bay. It was just before noon. Arthur was in the main room, reading the paper. He looked up when I entered. "Julian is on his way up." He had said 24 hours. It hadn't even been 12. Julian entered, carrying a thick, leather-bound dossier. He didn't look tired. He looked satisfied. He placed it on the glass table between us. "Mr. Arthur, Ms. Caldwell," he began, his voice flat. "It is, as you suspected, significantly worse than we thought." He opened the dossier. The first page was a simple flowchart. Marcus's company, Apex Innovative Solutions, was at the center. Dozens of arrows pointed to it, all red. "Apex is a shell," Julian said, his finger tapping the box. "It's on the verge of total collapse. He's been living on venture capital fumes and predatory loans for the last 18 months. He currently owes over $7 million to his primary suppliers and a string of private lenders." My head swam. $7 million, but his last quarter. He said they were projecting record profits. He just bought a new Porsche. "The Porsche is leased, naturally," Julian said, turning the page. "As for his self-made status, that is a fiction. He was a competent engineer, but he couldn't get a meeting with a dog catcher until he started dropping your name." "My name," I said, confused. "I told him I wanted nothing from my family. I never used my name." "You didn't have to," Arthur said, his voice quiet. "You were seen. You were his wife. The name Caldwell hung on you like a perfume, whether you wanted it to or not. He used your quiet reputation to imply he had the backing of a dynasty." Julian nodded. "He leveraged his marriage to you, Ms. Caldwell, to secure his initial round of funding. They thought he had deep, silent backing. They thought he had you. He's been lying to everyone from the very beginning." I felt sick. My entire life, my normal life, had been a prop in his con. "And his family," I whispered. "Brenda and Lacey have been living off him, and by extension, you, for years. They have zero assets. They are, in legal terms, parasites." I looked down, the shame replaced by a cold, hard anger. He had used me. He had used my desire for a normal life as his primary tool. "Now," Julian said, his voice changing slightly, "we come to the house. He pulled a separate, slimmer file from the dossier and placed it in front of me. It was bound in legal blue. Regarding the property in Medina, Marcus has no legal standing. But we bought it together, I said. I put down the down payment from what my mother left me, and he paid the mortgage. No, Ms. Caldwell. He did not, Julian said. He opened the file. The house was purchased in the name of Maya Caldwell, your maiden name. You signed the papers before you were married. A detail I'm sure he convinced you was just a timing issue. The mortgage, Julian continued, was a standard 30-year loan. He made the payments for the first 2 years, or rather, you made them, from your joint account. He turned to the last page. It was a single document, a deed of reconveyance. 3 years ago, Julian said, a single wire transfer paid the remaining balance in full. The loan was satisfied. I stared at the paper, not understanding. Who I didn't. It was from the Helena Caldwell Memorial Trust, Julian said softly. The trust your mother established for you upon her death. The one you were told would not mature until you were 40. I remembered, vaguely, a trust, something my mother's lawyers had me sign when I was 19. I hadn't thought about it in a decade. Your grandfather, believing your new husband was a liability, had your mother's executor modify the terms. The trust was instructed to immediately pay off any real estate assets held in your name. To secure them, Marcus was never informed. The bank statements were routed to a private post office box in Boston. It all hit me at once. The house was mine. It had always been mine. It was paid for. Marcus had never known. He had slapped me. He had dragged me by the hair. He had thrown me, in the pouring rain, out of a house that was 100%, unequivocally, and fully mine, all while promising my house to another woman. I looked up at my grandfather. Arthur Caldwell was smiling. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just seen its prey walk into a perfectly set trap. Good, he said, his voice a low, satisfied purr. We're not just taking back the house, we're taking his soul. The next morning, the world found out. It wasn't a press release. It was a single perfectly placed story on the Bloomberg terminal, followed minutes later by the Wall Street Journal. Maya Caldwell, missing. Heiress, rejoins Caldwell Industries as Executive VP, West Coast Acquisitions and Mergers. The photo was not of the soft, smiling woman I had been. It was a new photo, taken just hours ago in the penthouse. In it, I was wearing a steel gray, custom-tailored suit. My hair was pulled back into a severe, elegant knot. My face was pale, my expression cold, and I was not looking at the camera. I was looking past it, at something far more important. I was the very picture of a cold, powerful businesswoman. In a downtown Seattle coffee shop, Marcus Thorne was trying to liquidate assets. He was on the phone with his broker, trying to move the last of his stock options into a private account. Brenda and Lacey were with him, complaining about the quality of the pastries. The story hit the flat screen above the barista. "Hey, isn't that—" Lacey started, pointing a fake fingernail at the screen. Marcus looked up. His face, already pale with stress, turned the color of ash. He didn't see the woman he threw in the rain. He saw a 2-word headline, Caldwell Industries. Brenda's jaw dropped. "You said she had nothing," she shrieked, her voice high and panicked, drawing stares. "You said her family cut her off. You told me she was nobody." "Shut up," Marcus hissed, his eyes glued to the screen, to my face. He saw the title, Executive VP, Acquisitions. He understood what that meant. He fumbled with his phone, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it twice. He finally managed to dial my number. It rang once. Julian Croft's office. Marcus froze. "What? Who is this? I'm trying to reach my wife." "Maya." "Ms. Caldwell is in a meeting." Julian's voice replied, bored and professional. "All future communications from you or your associates are to be directed to our legal team. Have a pleasant day, Mr. Thorne. The line clicked dead. Back in the penthouse, which was now a fully operational war room, I was learning. The 5 years I had spent trying to be normal had dulled the edges of my education. Arthur was sharpening them. "You didn't just go to business school, Maya," he said, walking the perimeter of the room as Julian laid out new files. "You were trained for this since you could read. You were taught finance, yes, but you were also taught strategy. You were taught warfare." He was right. I had sat in on his meetings since I was 12. I spoke 4 languages. I could read a balance sheet and a geopolitical threat assessment with the same ease. I had just forgotten. I had chosen to forget. "Apex is a wounded animal," Arthur said, stopping in front of me. "A wounded animal is desperate and predictable, but you do not simply kill it. You dismantle it. You take it apart, piece by piece, until nothing is left but a cautionary tale." He put a hand on my shoulder. "Never act in anger, Maya. Anger is messy. It makes mistakes. You act when you are prepared. And we are going to be very prepared." Julian cleared his throat, holding up a new file. "Sir, we have one new development, a significant one." I looked at the folder. It had a single name on it, Sienna. "We identified the mistress," Julian said. His voice clipped. "Sienna Duval, 28, but she is not a random affair." He opened the file. Inside was a photo of a sharp, beautiful woman with calculating eyes, standing next to a much older man at a banking gala. "That," Julian said, "is Jean-Pierre Duval, her father. He is the president of Pacific Merchant Bank, the primary institution that holds the $5 million unsecured line of credit for Apex Innovative Solutions, the same loan that is now in default." I stared at the photo. My mind raced, connecting the dots. Marcus wasn't just having an affair. He wasn't just trying to save his company. He was romancing his banker's daughter to gain leverage, using my house as the collateral to secure the deal, and planning to dump her or me, or both, once he was stable. "He's playing a much bigger game than we thought," I murmured. "He was." Arthur corrected me, a cold glint in his eye. "He was playing checkers. He just wandered onto a grandmaster's chessboard." It was time to visit my home. We didn't come in the anonymous black navigators. I drove. A new, midnight black Audi R8 that had been delivered to the penthouse garage that morning. I had never driven a car like it. It felt less like a vehicle and more like a weapon. Julian sat in the passenger seat, silent and watchful. 2 lawyers, men with dead eyes and $1,000 suits, followed in a nondescript sedan. I didn't park in the driveway. I parked on the street, directly in front of the house. We walked up the path I had stumbled down less than 48 hours ago. Julian moved to ring the bell. I put a hand on his arm. "No." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the new key, the one Julian had provided, cut from the master records at the security company. The old locks had been rekeyed an hour ago. My old key, the one in Marcus's possession, was now a useless piece of metal. I slid the key in. It turned smoothly. I pushed the heavy oak door open. The foyer was a disaster. Cardboard boxes were everywhere. Suitcases lay open. They were in the middle of a frantic, panicked attempt to pack. Marcus, Brenda, and Lacey all froze, looking up from the living room, their faces a mixture of confusion and terror. "Oh," I said. My voice echoed in the marble entryway, and I was pleased to hear how cold it sounded, how steady. "I see you're packing. Good. That saves time." It was Brenda who recovered first, her face contorting with rage. "You bitch!" she shrieked, dropping a stack of my clothes. "You lying, deceitful bitch! You deceived us!" She lunged at me, her hands clawed. She didn't get 2 steps. Julian simply coughed, a small, polite sound. It was a signal. The 2 lawyers moved past me, stepping inside to flank the doorway. They moved as one. "Mrs. Thorne," the taller one said, his voice a bored monotone that cut through Brenda's shrieking. "My client, Ms. Caldwell, Has a temporary restraining order, effective immediately. Your son, and your daughter are prohibited from coming within 500 meters of her. The police are on their way to serve you with the official papers and escort you from the premises." Brenda stopped dead, her mouth open. I walked past her, my heels clicking on the floor. I ignored the boxes, the mess. I walked into the living room and picked up a small, ugly porcelain shepherdess statue from the mantel. Brenda's favorite. "I always hated this thing," I said, looking at it. Then, I let it drop to the floor. It shattered, the sound sharp and final in the stunned silence. I turned to face my husband. Marcus was shaking, his face the color of spoiled milk. He looked from me to Julian, to the lawyers, and back to me. He was cornered. "Maya," he stammered. "Maya, baby, please. This is a misunderstanding. We can fix this. I'm so sorry. I was angry. I wasn't thinking." "You have 10 minutes, I interrupted, looking at the watch on my wrist, a new one. A Patek Philippe, a gift from Arthur. "You can take your personal effects, your clothes, your toothbrush. Anything left after 10 minutes will be considered trash and disposed of accordingly." "Maya, please," he begged, taking a step forward. Julian took a corresponding step forward, and Marcus flinched back. "Ah, Marcus," I said, as if just remembering something. I tilted my head. "I was reviewing your company's documents last night. A bit of light reading, I have to say. I particularly enjoyed the part where you used my property." I gestured to the house. "The house I own outright, to collateralize the business loan you lied to Sienna Duval about." His face went from pale to bloodless. The shaking stopped. He was frozen in pure, abject terror. "I wonder," I continued, taking a step toward him, watching his eyes widen. "I wonder what her father, your banker, would think about that. I wonder what he'd think about you promising his daughter a house that you don't even own." He realized it then. I could see the exact moment the truth landed. I wasn't just taking back my house. I was taking back my life. And I knew everything. I didn't call her father. Arthur could have, with a single phone call, but that would have been his victory, not mine. This required a different touch. This was not about a business transaction. This was about a betrayal. I had Julian find Sienna's private cell number, and I sent her a single text. "He's been lying to you, too. Meet me. Four Seasons Bar. 1 hour. Come alone." I was there in 30 minutes, sitting in a dark, quiet booth, a glass of water in front of me. I had a file, a copy of the one Julian had prepared, resting on the table. Sienna Duval walked in at exactly the 1 hour mark. She was exactly what I had expected, tall, stunning, and radiating an aggressive, expensive arrogance. She wore a red dress that was designed to be noticed, and she scanned the bar like she owned it. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. She glided over to the booth, not sitting, but standing over me. "Who in the hell do you think you are, calling me?" she sneered, her voice low. "Please, sit down, Sienna," I said, gesturing to the empty seat. "I'll stand. You have 1 minute." "Fine," I said. I pushed the file across the table. It was thin, just a few pages. "I'm the other woman he lied to." She glanced at the file, then at me, her face a mask of contempt. "I'm not interested in your—" "You will be," I interrupted, my voice as cold as hers. "I suggest you read the first page. It's a bank statement. Yours." That got her. She slid into the booth, her eyes never leaving mine, and pulled the file toward her. She opened it. The first page was a copy of her private bank ledger, showing a transfer of $200,000 to one of Marcus's Shell accounts. The second page was a receipt from a high-end jeweler, dated 2 days later, for a diamond tennis bracelet, the same bracelet Marcus had given me for our anniversary last month. I watched her face. The arrogant mask didn't slip, but the color drained from her cheeks. Her breathing, which had been slow and controlled, hitched. "He told me that was a prototype, a gift from a new client," I said softly. I'm sure he told you the $200,000 was for an emergency component order. She said nothing, just turned the page. The next document was the one that mattered. It was a copy of the loan agreement from her father's bank, Pacific Merchant, and attached to it, as collateral, was the deed to my Medina house. My name, Maya Caldwell, clearly visible at the bottom. Her hands were gripping the pages so tightly her knuckles were white. The mask was gone. In its place was a cold, pure fury that I recognized, because it was the same fury I felt. He had promised her my house. He had used her money to buy me gifts. He had lied to both of us, positioning us like pawns against each other. He told me you were a psycho, she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. He said you were unstable, that your family had cut you off, and that the divorce was a formality to get you the help you needed. He said the house was his, tied up in a messy prenup. He told me you were a desperate social climbing investor, I replied, who he had to string along to keep his company afloat. We stared at each other for a long moment, an alliance of the scorned. We can hate each other, I said, breaking the silence. He's counting on that. Or we can make sure he never ever lies to another woman again. Sienna closed the file. She looked up, and her eyes were terrifyingly clear. What do you want? This was the moment. The pivot point. You pull your personal funding, I said, leaning in. Every dime, you call your father, you tell him the truth, and he calls in the $5 million loan, citing fraudulent collateral, immediately, I added. At the same time, I want a simultaneous, catastrophic failure of all his support systems. Sienna was quiet for a moment. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. He'll be ruined. That's the point, I said. She nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. All right, I'll do it, but on one condition. What? She leaned across the table, our faces just inches apart. I don't want to just pull the plug. I want to be there when the monitors flatline. When he finds out what we did, I want to see his face. And I want him to know, she added, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper, that I'm the one who helped you do it. I extended my hand. Done. She took it. Her grip was like steel. The enemy of my enemy was now my friend. Monday, 9 a.m. The execution began. Marcus, Brenda, and Lacey were holed up in a cheap, furnished apartment they had rented with one of their last remaining credit cards. The beige walls were closing in on them. Marcus was on his laptop, frantically trying to move assets that were already frozen. At precisely 9 o'clock, a new email pinged. The sender was Sienna Duval. He clicked it open, perhaps expecting a lifeline, an apology, a sign of their alliance. The message contained only 6 words. My investment is withdrawn. Good luck. Before he could even curse, his phone, sitting on the cheap particle board table, rang. The caller ID was Pacific Merchant Bank. He snatched it up. Hello, yes, this is Thorne. He was expecting to negotiate a payment plan. He received an apocalypse. Mr. Thorne, a cold, unfamiliar voice said, this is to inform you that your $5 million line of credit has been called. Due to a material breach of contract and fraudulent representation of collateral, the full amount is due immediately, as in, by end of business today. What, you can't, Marcus shouted, leaping to his feet. I have assets. Our auditors show you have no unencumbered assets. Mr. Thorne, a collections team will be in touch. The line clicked dead. As he stared at the phone, his laptop began to chime, an accelerating rhythm of death. 1 email, then 2, then 10. They were from his suppliers, his server host, his logistics partners. Every single one, simultaneously, was demanding immediate and full payment of all outstanding invoices. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Caldwell Industries had spent the weekend quietly buying up every dollar of his corporate debt. We were his sole creditor. The vice was set. Apex Innovative Solutions didn't just collapse, it imploded. By 9:30 a.m., his accounts were seized. By 10, his company website was offline. By noon, he was not just bankrupt, he was in a financial hole so deep he would never crawl out. The credit card they had used for the apartment was, naturally, tied to his business accounts. It was declined that afternoon. The building manager, unmoved by Brenda's shrieks, had them evicted by 4 p.m. They were literally on the street, with 3 suitcases and a stack of now useless company letterhead. Lacey, in a final, pathetic act of defiance, did what her generation does when faced with consequences. She pulled out her phone. She started recording a tear-filled video for TikTok, her voice cracking with manufactured hysteria. "Please help us," she wailed, mascara running. "My brother is being attacked by his evil psycho ex-wife, Maya Caldwell, the heiress, is trying to destroy us just because he left her. She's cruel, she's rich, and we are homeless. Please, somebody share this." Wah, the video, fueled by the drama of a rich versus poor narrative, started to gain traction. I watched it from the penthouse. It had 30,000 views. I looked at Julian. He was already on the phone. "Defamation," he said into the receiver. "Slander per se, yes. Expedited removal." Within 1 hour, the video was gone. Lacey's TikTok account was permanently suspended for violating community guidelines on harassment and misinformation. They were at rock bottom. No money, no home, no platform. Brenda, shivering in the late afternoon chill, suddenly clutched the heavy diamond necklace Marcus had given her 2 Christmases ago. "This," she hissed, her eyes gleaming. "This is real. This is worth thousands. It's our ticket out." Ignoring Marcus's protests, she grabbed it, stormed off, and found the nearest high-end jewelry store, a quiet, exclusive shop in a wealthy enclave. She marched in and slammed the necklace on the glass counter. How much for this?" The jeweler, an older gentleman with impeccable manners, picked up the necklace. His eyes widened, almost imperceptibly. He knew the piece. It had been commissioned by Arthur Caldwell's wife over 40 years ago. He had appraised it himself. "It's a beautiful piece," the jeweler said, his voice smooth as silk. "I must verify the stones in the back. Please, wait here." He stepped into a back office, leaving Brenda tapping her foot. He didn't check the stones. He called my grandfather. And then he called the police. Julian's secure phone buzzed. He listened, his face turning to granite. He hung up and looked at me. "They have detained Brenda," he said, his voice cold. "The necklace she was attempting to sell. It wasn't a gift, Ms. Caldwell. It was part of your mother's heirloom collection. It was kept in the main house safe." He didn't need to say the rest. Marcus had not just been a bad husband, he was a common thief. He had stolen from my dead mother before he had even been kicked out of my house. Brenda's arrest was swift. The charge was possession of stolen property, a felony, given the value of my mother's necklace. Bail was set at an astronomical figure, a number no one in her family could pay. When Lacey heard her mother had been arrested, she did the only thing she was capable of doing. She ran. While Marcus was frantically trying to call a bail bondsman, she grabbed her own suitcase and simply vanished. She took the last $200 in cash they had and disappeared, presumably to find some other man to leech off of. Marcus was now utterly, completely alone. He was a man with no family, no money, and no home. And thanks to Sienna's father, he was now a man with an active warrant. The bank had officially filed charges of felony fraud. His face, the handsome face that had charmed me and so many others, was now in a police database. A man with nothing to lose is not a man. He is a cornered animal, and cornered animals are predictable. They lash out. My secure phone, the one Julian had given me, buzzed. It was an unknown number. I answered, putting it on speaker. Arthur and Julian stood nearby. "You won," he rasped. It was his voice, but ragged, broken, and filled with a gravelly hatred that chilled me. He was calling from a payphone. I could hear the street noise in the background. You fucking won. You took it all. The company, the house. You even took my family. You did this, Marcus, I said, my voice steady. A wild, unhinged laugh crackled through the phone. Me, you rich bitch. You think you can just snap your fingers and destroy a man. I think you're done, Marcus. No, he spat. No, I'm not. I still have one thing. I have one thing of yours that you can't take back, and I'm going to take it from you. What are you talking about? You'll see. The line went dead. A second later, a text message came through to the same phone. It was from a different number, a burner. It was a single image. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the house in Medina. It was a picture of a red gas can and a cheap plastic lighter, sitting on the familiar, worn wooden planks of a porch. The porch. He was at my family's old cabin on Vashon Island, the one place on Earth that meant anything to me. The simple, rustic house my parents had built with their own hands. The place we'd spent every summer. It was the only thing of theirs I had left. The only place he knew I truly, deeply loved. A second text came through. Come here. Alone. Now. If I see cops, if I see your fucking bodyguards, I'll burn it to the ground. I'll burn every memory you have. He's unhinged, Arthur said immediately, his voice iron. Julian, deploy the team. Local police. SWAT. No, I said. Both of them looked at me. No, I said again, my voice stronger. If he sees anyone, he'll do it. He's desperate enough. He's not bluffing. Ms. Caldwell, it is too dangerous, Julian protested, his face grim. He is unstable. I know, I said. I looked at the picture, at the worn wood my father had sanded. This was not about money. This was about me and him. This was about the life he stole and the memories he was now trying to burn. He wants me. He's a coward. He'll only be brave enough to do this if he thinks he has the upper hand. If he sees a show of force, he'll light the match out of pure spite. I turned to Arthur. He threw me out. He tried to humiliate me. This time, I end it myself. A long, tense silence filled the penthouse. My grandfather searched my face, and for the first time, I think he saw the woman he had raised, not the girl who had run away. Julian, Arthur said, not taking his eyes off me. Give her the items. Julian nodded, though his disapproval was obvious. He went to a safe and retrieved two small objects. One was a simple, elegant platinum pen. The other was a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece. The pen is a tracker, military grade, accurate to within a foot, Julian said, his voice all business. The earpiece is audio only. We will hear everything you hear. You will not hear us, but we will be close. My team is already en route to the island, moving dark. I put the earpiece in. It was nearly invisible. I clipped the pen to the inside pocket of my jacket. I'm going alone, I said. Yes, Arthur said, but you will not be unprotected. I took the ferry, the Audi feeling absurdly out of place on the old diesel-scented boat. The night was cold, and the drive to the cabin was dark, the narrow island roads closing in on me. I parked the car a quarter-mile down the road and walked, the pen in my pocket, the earpiece a silent presence in my ear. I saw him before he saw me. He was on the porch, illuminated by the single yellow bug light. He looked exactly as I had imagined a hobo, a ghost. His expensive clothes were rumpled and stained, his hair matted, his eyes wild and darting. He was a creature of pure desperation. The red gas can was at his feet. I stepped out of the darkness and onto the grass. He flinched, startled, then broke into that high, unhinged laugh. You came. You actually came, he sneered, his voice cracking. Still so weak, still so predictable. He stood up, grabbing the can as a prop. Look at this place. A piece of shit cabin. This is what you cared about. Right. This dump. My parents built this house, I said, my voice carrying in the cold night air. I stopped at the foot of the porch steps, keeping my distance. Your parents, he scoffed. He began to pace, his energy manic and terrifying. This is all your fault, all of it. If you had just been a real wife, if you had just shared what you had from the beginning, none of this would have happened. I was building something. We could have had everything. We did have everything, Marcus, I said, and the calmness in my own voice surprised me. It was a cold, hard, and final truth. You had my love. You had my support. You had everything I was, and it wasn't enough. You were too greedy. You wanted more. You wanted what wasn't yours. What wasn't mine? He screamed, kicking the porch railing. It should have been, what's yours is mine in sickness and in health. You were the sickness, Marcus. His face contorted. He lifted the red can. Shut up. Just shut up. He unscrewed the cap, the plastic squeaking. You want to save your precious memories. Fine. Kneel. Kneel down and apologize to me. Apologize for what you did. No. Apologize. He roared, and he sloshed some of the gasoline onto the wooden steps near my feet. The smell was overpowering. Or I burn it. I burn it all right now. I looked at his face, at the lighter in his other hand. He meant it. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered myself, bending my knees, and knelt on the damp grass. Marcus let out a short, triumphant laugh. He thought he'd won. He thought this was the final humiliation. That's right. That's where you... He looked down, needing to open the lighter's flip-top. He placed the heavy gas can on the porch to free up his hand. That was the moment. The second his eyes left me, the instant he was off balance, crouched over the lighter. I didn't lunge like a brawler. I exploded from the ground, a single coiled movement Julian had drilled into me for 6 months, a lifetime ago. Self-defense, Ms. Caldwell, is not about strength. It is about commitment. I committed. All my weight, all my rage, drove my foot straight into the side of his left knee. It wasn't a kick. It was a battering ram. The sound was not a shout. It was a wet, sickening pop, followed by an animal scream of pure agony. He went down, his leg buckling at an angle it was never meant to, and he collapsed onto the porch, clutching his destroyed knee. He was still screaming when the world lit up. Dozens of high-intensity floodlights from the surrounding woods snapped on, turning the night into an operating theater. Marcus froze, his screams cut short by a gasp of terror, shielding his eyes. Julian Croft stepped out of the shadows, looking as immaculate as he had in the city. He was followed by 2 uniformed county police officers. Julian didn't look at Marcus. He looked at me, a quick, assessing glance. Then he calmly walked onto the porch and picked up the lighter from where Marcus had dropped it. "Marcus Thorne," Julian said, his voice flat. "You are under arrest for attempted arson, grand theft, and multiple counts of wire fraud." The officers hauled Marcus to his feet. He couldn't stand. His leg just dangled, and he collapsed again, sobbing and moaning as they dragged him by his arms off the porch and onto the grass. And then another figure emerged from the darkness. Sienna Duval. She was wearing a black coat, her face pale and devoid of all emotion. She just watched as they cuffed Marcus, her expression like stone. I didn't wait. I didn't want to see any more. I turned my back on the man sobbing on the ground, on the house, on my past. I started my walk back to the car. I heard Sienna's voice, cold and clear, cut through the night. She was holding the gas can, the one Marcus had dropped. "Let me help you clean up this mess," she said to the officers. She walked past them, past the whimpering shell of Marcus Thorne, and toward the edge of the woods, where his leased Porsche was parked, hidden from the road. I heard the sound of the gas can being emptied, a long, steady pour, not on the house, but on the car. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please comment below and let's share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.